Hi, my name is Sarah Stearns. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to share with you a theater piece called Navigate, which explores themes from theoretical physics. But beforehand, I want to just talk a little bit about myself and my research. So let me go ahead and share a presentation. Great. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so what you're seeing now is kind of a video montage. There's no sound, so don't worry about that. It's a video montage of previous pieces I've made. Unfortunately, when I've shared it via Zoom in the past, it sometimes is a little bit choppy. So please forgive me if the quality is not fantastic. But I wanted to share it because first I'm going to talk a little bit about my background as a theater artist. So I'm a theater artist first and foremost, also a researcher. And my training and background is in physical theater or movement-based theater and contemporary dance. So my pieces you might call like experimental or alternative, right? Um, and for me, the process of creating these pieces, so I usually don't work from a script. I don't work with like a show that already exists. Instead, I'm kind of creating from scratch, sometimes by myself, sometimes with an ensemble. Um, so when I start to create a new piece, I usually, spend a few weeks or even months informing myself. So reading, watching, looking at other artists who have worked with the same topic, um, and just kind of pulling together a lot of different information on whatever the theme, just really digging into whatever theme it is that I'm working with, pulling information together, whatever threads kind of start to feel relevant, and then translating that into song or movement or monologue or whatever it is, and then fitting all those pieces together until something coherent takes shape, right? So in other words, research. Um, and in fact, there's this physicist, Dr. Kostas Nikolopoulos at CERN, who has this great quote, which is something along the lines of, what is known in the sciences as research is known in the arts as the creative process, right? So it's, in many ways the same thing by a different name. So I became really interested in that, and I decided to kind of firm up my base in research and understand, put kind of different methodologies in my wheelhouse as an artist. So I did a master's at the University of Barcelona in interdisciplinary arts education with a concentration in research. Like I said, I've always really been interested in this, how the creative process can be a research process, how it can kind of take data, even quantitative data, and translate it into an experience. So one thing I want to talk about is art is experiential, right? Necessarily, especially the performing arts, which are always time-based, right? Um, the audience or spectator is gaining some kind of knowledge through having an experience. The art piece is generating or sometimes translating knowledge into something that the audience can then experience. And often the knowledge that the arts are communicating is something that can't be expressed through words or numbers, or in some ways we're circumventing kind of technical languages or mathematical basis. And any audience, like the general public, can kind of access this knowledge through having an experience through the arts, right? Um, so it turns out that experiential learning is like one of the best practices of science education. So I started to ask myself, can the performing arts take the hard sciences and make them experiential? And can people then learn about the hard sciences through the performing arts? And that's what I ended up doing my thesis project on at the University of Barcelona. So I looked at 7 theater and dance pieces that address topics specifically from theoretical physics. So I looked at what topics are they addressing, how are they addressing it? So what part of the performance is addressing those topics? So is it, in the text, or is it being explained through words? Is it in movement? Is it in visual elements like the set design or the costumes or the lighting, or the characters or the structure of the story, right? And then how are audiences receiving that knowledge and are they learning? So that has kind of turned a corner in my art making as well. But today I'm actually not going to talk about that research. Instead, what I'm talking about is A show, I'm going to share with you my kind of first ever foray into combining science and arts. So a show that I actually made before I did any of that research, before this master's program, um, called Navigate. So Navigate is pretty fantastical and experimental. So just in case you haven't read the synopsis, I'll kind of lay it out for you. It's about a pirate ship uh, who has with a figurehead, right? Like this kind of, usually it's a woman at the prow of the ship, and the pirate ship gets into a shipwreck, and the figurehead comes to life, and she's the only survivor. And since she spent her whole life staring out at the horizon, right on the prow of the ship, there, she decides to sail to the horizon. And in this kind of fantastical, 17th century world, she gets to the edge of the horizon and she falls off it, right? So as you can see in kind of this artist depiction here, right, this like historical idea of like getting to the edge of the world and falling off. So she falls off and she kind of floats for thousands of years through the cosmos, and just kind of observes all these different nebula and star clusters and a pulsar, and you'll see it in the show, before eventually returning to Earth via wormhole. So very fantastical, like I said, not a lot of hard science, but each of these kind of wild, fantastical ideas came from historical fact or scientific fact, that I then tried to kind of weave into this magical world. In fact, so this slide is just kind of bits and pieces of that the process at the very beginning, of things that kind of inspired this show, and things, little bits, screen captures of things that were part of the creative process. So one other thing I want to mention is that I'm not talking about educational theater, right? So sometimes when a piece is trying to teach something, it becomes didactic, right? And it kind of loses that idea of like learning through having an experience, right? Instead, you're being taught something, you're being explained something, right? And I've worked in educational theater for a long time, and there are some really good didactic pieces. That's not what I'm interested in, with this piece or with other pieces that I'm making. I'm more interested in that kind of blending of science into like the magic that can only happen in theater, and how people can learn through that kind of lived experience when they're not being taught something directly, but instead living it through live performance, right? So all that being said, I'm going to show the video now. Theater is only theater when it's live, so I don't love sharing a pre-recorded video, right? I don't think it's a great experience. It's not the same as being in a theater, obviously. And so I commend you if you stick around, and I commend you for coming to see it. And so, one thing I'll leave you with to kind of guide your viewing is thinking about these kind of bits and pieces of fact woven together with fantasy to create a story. I'm currently working on another piece, a piece about space-time, kind of taking all that knowledge from the research I did on all these other shows that looked at theoretical physics and kind of weaving that into a new show that's going to be coming out in February. And I'm really excited to like talk about that, collaborate, especially with people who are more from science. So, if you want to know more about that, or you have any thoughts, or you'd like to kind of chat with me and the actors, or give us your feedback, we would really appreciate that. Again, it's a new theater piece about space-time. Please feel free to check out my website there or send me an email. I'm based in Barcelona. And yeah, I'd love to meet in person or on a call and talk a little bit more about this new project. So please feel free to reach out. And again, thank you so much for being here. And with that, I will share the video with you.